Everyone, please rise. Welcome to the Cade Museum for this April 13th meeting of the Rotary Club of Gainesville. Please silence your cell phones. And for those of you watching this after the fact on YouTube, please register your registration. I said that again this week, didn't I? Please register your participation for the meeting today at info@rotarygainesville.org. Again, send an email to info@rotarygainesville.org to register your participation today. We begin our meeting today, as we do each and every week, with song and Pledge of Allegiance. And back after an extended vacation to lead us today, Pete Enwall.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, it's good to be back. As George Burns would say, it's good to be with you tonight. At my age, it's good to be anywhere. So, okay, so I want you to know that I wrote a book. I have written a book on birds. My publisher says that it is flying off the shelves. And do you know why people wear shamrocks on St. Patrick's Day? Well, the reason is because real rocks are way too heavy. We're, we're going to sing God Bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pete. Now remain standing for our invocation today, offered via Zoom by Kevin Thorpe. Kevin.
Pray. Lord, we are forever grateful for this day. We thank you for every mountain you brought us over, for every valley you have carried us through. You told us in your word that we have not because we ask not. We ask you now to continue to bring healing in every corner of our country, continue to bring us together, continue to allow our organization to serve as a beacon light of harmony and unity. Bless today's presentation, that as our country continues to reopen, that we will be able to travel safely and be reunited with friends and loved ones. It is for your sake and for your glory we pray. Amen.
If you're visiting us today, please stand up again. Don, do we have any visitors today? Greg Young seems to be pointing to someone who's a visitor. Okay. Don, go ahead and take the mic over there.
Good afternoon, Richard Allen here, and I'm joined today by my lovely bride, Susan Maston.
We've got a big announcement today. This is our newest member, Jacob Atten. So please welcome him.
Welcome all. We bring up to the podium next our president, your president, Matthew Brady.
That was quick. Thank you. No announcements. Moving on. All right. Your board had a great meeting last night. we discussed and voted on 6 small projects that we can utilize do-goodery funds for. Several members of the board worked independently in gathering some ideas from other members and from outside. We're going to give you more information on that, but I just thought it was important to let you know that the board will be presenting and showing how we will continue to do good in the community. And I want to thank each and every one of you as great members and your commitment to the club, not just the club, but to our community. And we'll keep you updated on that very soon, probably in the next week. So thank you. I missed an announcement last week. Rebuild Together is accepting volunteers on a limited basis. That's for April through June. If you're interested, you can contact Ryan Thompson direct. He's on Zoom today, but his information's in DACDB, or I can provide you his information, and he can help coordinate that if you're interested. You should have received last week from our district governor the Flamingo flyer. I wanted to give you a few highlights in there. He's going to have town hall meetings on April 20th at 6 p.m. and May 23rd at 3:30. Still doing the Mingo Bingo workshops. That's April 16th at 5:30 and May 15th at 10 a.m. And then mark your calendar. Again, another non-live event. We will not have a district training assembly live again this year, unfortunately, but there will be a virtual training assembly Saturday, May 8th, if you're interested in ABLES. So mark your calendar for May 8th. So those are some highlights from there. There was like 15 or 20 pages. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Please, if you got it, look at it. I could not bring it all here today. So as I said last week, I was hopeful, and we are continuing the streak of live presenters with one of our own, and excited about that. He is a retired Air Force colonel, aviation science professor, famous author of topics other than birds. And they're actually very good books. Yes, good point. Mechanical birds. Fabulous storyteller, awesome Rotarian, and a tremendous friend to us all, retired Colonel George Mazzeo. Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. It is great to be here in person, although one of the advantages of being able to Zoom in the meeting is I can mute Pete's jokes. All right. Let me see a show of hands. How many people, since the pandemic has begun, have taken an airline flight? All right, airline flight. Okay, so I would say that's about 25%. How many, let me show of hands, how many people have considered taking one? Okay. How many people just aren't sure it's safe yet? Yeah, me neither. There's a lot of conflicting information, but I thought we could talk today a little bit about the facts. And so we're going to talk about air travel in the age of COVID. Thank you. Oh, first of all, before you do any presentation, you need to do your disclaimers. Hello. Oh, hey, hold on, Scotty. There we go. There we go. Number one, I'm not a virologist. So anything I tell you will have nothing to do with the science of COVID. Number two, I haven't checked the news today. And because it changes all, it's a moving target. What's going on with COVID? One day it can be, look out, the fourth wave is coming. The next day I can walk through the flames of COVID hell and not get a sunburn. And finally, I'm here to tell you that no experts were harmed in building this presentation. Wait, for the simple reason I didn't consult any. All right, so what goes into the safety of the air you're breathing when you travel? Well, there are these factors. There are the aircraft systems. Talk about those briefly. There's the processing systems, how we get from the parking lot into the airplane. And then finally, personal behavior, which there's no accounting for, is there? Now let's start with the aircraft systems. Beautiful day up there at 30,000 feet, isn't it? Couldn't look more pleasant. Well, maybe that view out at Depot Park looks more pleasant, but that looks beautiful out there. It is also fatal. At 30,000 feet, the temperature is minus 50 degrees, and 75% of the atmosphere is below you. So the atmosphere goes up about 300 miles. But the air, I mean, everything we do happens in the first 5. So, whoa. How do we get air? Yeah. What are we breathing? Well, what are we breathing right now? How many people think, well, everybody knows we're not breathing oxygen, we're breathing air. And the air is basically 78% nitrogen, 22%, 21% oxygen, and the other 1% is all the other gases, water vapor, carbon dioxide, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's also what you're breathing in the airplane, because you remember that beautiful picture looking out the side window there of the airplane? The ratio of the gases does not change with altitude. So if I go to 30,000 feet, it's still 72% or 78% nitrogen, 71% oxygen, 1% all the other gases. The trouble is it's too thin to breathe. Matter of fact, at 30,000 feet, Mount Everest is what, 29,000 feet? So it'd be like being at the top of Mount Everest. Now, people can get to the top of Mount Everest if they're Sherpas and they're acclimated, and they're fit, but it's not so good for us normal folk on a regular travel on an airline. So we have to get air into the body of the aircraft that is breathable. Now, how many people think we're breathing oxygen when we fly in the airplane? No, we're breathing air. Same mixture. And where's that air coming from? Tanks? Right, it's coming from that's your symbol for the compressor of the engine. You keep doing that and I'll keep saying you're right. Well, okay, so recirculate what? How did it get in there in the first place? Okay, so not only can't we breathe, all right, but the engine can't breathe at that altitude. And so this is a basic jet engine. And starting from left to right, you've got what's called the cold section. That's those blue arrows. That is the compressor. And air comes shooting in the front of the intake. And since you're going about 400 miles an hour, it's already coming in there at a pretty good rip. And then there's a series of compressors that condense it even further. So what happened, and then it forces it through, if you look at the bottom top of the diagram, smaller and smaller diameter. And so the air backs up and it gets compressed. And finally, it is rich enough to burn oxygen in the engine, and we can cheat and take a little bit off the engine, normally towards the end of the compressor, and pump it into the cockpit. So you're breathing pure, clean air that's come from the outside. There's nothing living out there. Okay. Even if COVID could survive, or any virus could survive, there's no hosts. So the air is completely uncontaminated, and it's coming into the airplane. And then it is distributed. Now, how does that work? Well, I was looking for a model. And I kind of got this assignment here at the last minute. So luckily I was coming in today and I was rooting through the floorboard in Jason's truck. And I found an excellent model sitting on that. Really, Pabst? Really? Yeah. That's an excellent model of the aircraft that you're flying in. Basically a thin skin of aluminum, and compressed air is being pumped in there until it's at an altitude. The aircraft cabin, the interior of the airplane, is at an altitude that we can all breathe and live comfortably. Normally about 5,000 feet to 8,000 feet. So the skin of the airplane is like a balloon. If you keep blowing air into it, what's going to happen eventually? That's right, the skin's going to come off and it's going to explode. Your flight crew is concerned with two altimeters. These are old school, called round dials, steam gauges, whatever, everything's digital now. The altimeter on the left shows you how high you're flying. The altimeter on the right shows how high the cabin is. So what happens is when you take off, these altimeters will climb together, but since pressurized air is being put into the airplane, as the actual altitude of the airplane goes up, the altitude of the cabin will stay stable wherever the pilot chooses to set it. And like I said, it's usually 5,000 to 8,000 feet. Why not put it at sea level? It would really be comfortable then, wouldn't it? Well, there'd be too much pressure differential between the inside and the outside of the airplane, and you would get what happened to this Hawaiian Airjet in 1988. Imagine sitting there in first class and next thing you know, you're flying in a convertible. I think the only compensation that was made was they charged them extra for that when they landed. Okay, so here is Jason's beer can again. So we got to solve this overinflation problem. And it's done with a little valve in the back of the airplane, which would be synonymous with the pull tab. Jason, you're familiar with the pull tab? Because you got to suck really hard to get the beer out without it. And that is a valve that opens and closes depending on the pressure in the airplane. So if the pilot was to push the power up instead of the airplane swelling up, this valve would open. When he pulls the throttles idle, the valve closes. Say again? Oh, what was there a question? No? All right. So here's a basic design of what's happening. The aircraft that you are breathing is coming from outside the airplane at the altitude you're at. It is perfectly clean, perfectly pure, better than operating room quality. It comes in through the engine, compressed, and then fed into the cabin. Now this air comes in through a series of vents in top of the aircraft, and then it flows down to the floor and is sucked out through vents through that outflow valve. And it give me that signal. It recycles the air. Recycles it. How often does it recycle the air? The entire volume in the aircraft changes every 3 minutes. So every 3 minutes, you got a fresh set of air. Now that used to be the way they built all jets. And it was a great system if you were trying to fight COVID. But in about the 90s, a change was made. And the change was made was to save money. And to save money, I mean save gasoline. Because when you take a little bit of air off the compressor and use it to pressurize the airplane, that's air that can't go to the engine, which means to fly the same speed, you've got to use more power, you got to use more gas. And so as the air starts to flow out towards the back there, you can see a blue box where it says cabin air zone 3 and it says mixing unit. About half the air that is flowing through the aircraft goes out the outflow valve, and the other half goes back through the aircraft to be recycled. So you're now breathing 50% of pure air, clean as can be, and 50% that is put through a HEPA filter, high efficiency particulate accumulator, yeah, HEPA filter. A HEPA filter is the same filters they use in hospital operating rooms, and it stops, as you can see there, on just about everything. The biggest particle that can go through there is 0.3 microns, 0.03 microns. Your average, well, the COVID virus is 0.5 microns, 0.05 microns. So the little tiny holes in the filter are smaller than the virus, and it traps all the virus. So now you've got this mixture of air coming in. That air is half the outside air, half the filtered air. And the whole thing recirculates every 30 minutes. Here's a diagram of how it works. You've got all those vents in the top, including those 3 that are above your seats that you normally see. And then it goes down to the bottom and gets sucked out. Now, that means that the basic airflow in the airplane is top to bottom, not front to aft, not aft to forward. So what one person's breathing is generally not being directed towards anybody else, but down towards the floor. Let's go back to this. That's good. All right. So what's our confidence in the system? Our confidence is very high. System works. It's worked forever. Does a great job of filtering the air in the airplane. That part of the system works great. Now we got to look at the others. See how we handle the passengers when they show up, because this has a big factor. This is a big factor. By the way, this has changed now because if you're vaccinated, it's one set of rules. If you're not vaccinated, well, it's another. So if you're vaccinated, let's get out of our car and we'll go into the airport terminal. CDC says you must wear a mask anytime you're on public transportation or any hub. Well, the airport's a hub. Now, this is the question I want to ask those who have flown. When you've been in there, have the normal CDC guidelines been enforced? In other words, to your eye, is everybody social distancing in line? No. I hear varying stories, and you're right. It seems to be a county option. In other words, whatever, actually it's whatever is necessary. So airlines are trying to adjust right now. Here's an interesting fact, I think anyway. Prior to the pandemic, according to TSA, there were 2 million boardings a day of passengers in the United States alone. Okay. About April of last year, when things were really scary, the boardings went down to 100,000. So that's a 95% reduction in the number of passengers. We're back up now to about 1.5 million passengers a day. What does that mean? Well, it means that the airports are getting more crowded, and also the airplanes are getting more crowded, because what's one of the first things the airlines did? Right, there was blocking seats, okay, and that certainly affected things, but even, yeah, they reduced the number of flights. What they did was they they take their least efficient airplanes, their older ones, and they park them. Okay, and then they take the flight crews and the cabin crews and lay them off. So now, all of a sudden, here comes everybody back. They're in a mad scramble to catch up. By the way, I'm glad you brought up blocking seats. Used to be that every airline blocked seats. As of a week ago, when I went to all their websites, Delta was the only airline that was blocking the middle seat. So things change. And that's not mandated by the CDC, so they do what they want to do. All right. They're trying, the airlines are encouraging self-check-in. Go to a kiosk. And of course, their recommendation is that you just use carry-on bags. That way you avoid checking a bag and work interfacing with other people. Now, after I get through checking in, I got to go to TSA. TSA's got their rules, but their rules, other than putting up plexiglass between the TSA guy and you, the passenger, aren't much different than normal CDC guidance. Of course, they highly recommend you pre-check, so that way you can keep your belt and shoes and all that stuff on. But now, interestingly enough, there haven't been large number of reports of passengers catching COVID. But as of 2 days ago, there were 356 TSA agents that were infected. Well, who's infecting them? Yeah. So the disease is present in the airports. Okay, now once you're on the aircraft, what are the rules there? What are the travel rules, period? If you're vaccinated, do you need to do anything according to the CDC prior to a flight? That's it. That's it. If you're not vaccinated, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to wear a mask. You're supposed to have a test between 1 to 3 days prior to departure. I can see you giving me that look, meaning you didn't do that, meaning welcome to the club. There's right, if you exactly. So there's these rules, but a lot of the rules are unenforceable. I'm pretty sure that when you got to your destination, you didn't self-quarantine for 7 days either. Just guessing. So when you're on the aircraft, must you wear your mask at all times? Yes, you must. Except if you're a 2-year-old child or younger, or you're eating, which is a rare event. Normally, and this is an airline option. This is not mandated by the CDC. So you have to go to every airline site and see what it's got to say. And they all work something like this. If the flight's less than 200 miles, you're not getting anything. If it's greater than 200 miles, but less than 900 miles, you're going to get some water and a snack. And over 900 miles, you may get something a little bit more substantial. But the fact of the matter is, the only time you should be exposed with your mask off is when you're eating. Now, does that protect you? Well, if the systems are working, it should be pretty good, but nothing protects you from the person sitting next to you sneezing in your face. So wearing the mask is generally a pretty good idea. Let me talk one more thing about masks. It really doesn't matter how you feel about masks, does it? Unless you think you're the only person on earth. Because if you're going to make an issue of the mask, then the whole flight's going to have a problem, aren't they? If you're on the ground, they're going to have to deboard you, settle the situation, delay everybody else. If you're in flight and make a big enough stink about it, the crew's going to have no choice but to land at the first available destination, settle the problem and go. And if you're going from San Francisco to Hawaii, what are they going to do? So personal behavior is a big deal too. Yeah, here's some, I guess they were fighting over the bag of peanuts that was issued. So, what's the bottom line? Safe, not safe? We don't know for sure because there's no objective evidence. But there is anecdotal evidence, all right? First of all, we are not seeing reports, whether in print or in the media, other media, reference widespread contagion of people flying on airplanes. It's just not happening, okay? It's not happening to the flight crews. They're breathing the same air you are. Like I said, it is happening to the TSA agent. So anecdotally, it seems pretty safe. But when I'm getting ready to end the presentation, maybe we can get well, let's just do that now. Show of hands. How many people think it's safe? Yeah, so most of us think it's safe. And I think most of us are right. There's a Harvard study that came out 2 weeks ago. And that study said, well, let me give you some background. You remember when COVID first started, there was always these lists of activities listed in priority by danger, and up top was gyms and airline flights. Well, now this Harvard study's got airline flights way down low because now they've got some data to work with. Oh, but the study was commissioned by the airlines, the airports and the aircraft manufacturers. So believe what you want. Anyway, it's a personal decision. And it looks like everybody in this room is, if they had someplace they wanted to fly or needed to fly, would do it. Is that correct? All right. Now you understand that A, the aircraft system is very reliable. B, the reception and processing system is reliable as the people want to make it. Not passengers, but as reliable as the staff wants to make it. And then personal behavior on the airplane, who knows? All right, that ends my presentation. Any questions?
Thanks, George. Jacob, I really enjoyed your presentation. So I left January. One of my best friend, mom passed away from in Michigan. So I had to go and was scared. So I went, but I'm interested in the behavior side because I am sort of extrovert. If you know me, I like to talk.
Yeah.
But that's again, it's COVID rules. So apparently when I went there, it just changes the thinking of you can't talk to your neighbors. And for sure, the social distancing was the opposite. There was no room left, actually. There's
No, I
spacing.
mean, you cannot be sitting in adjacent airline seats and be social distancing.
Yeah, and so I think it's relatively safe, but I'm kind of interested in like what are your assumption of why TSA are getting more, not the passenger or the crew? I wonder if you have to guess.
Yeah, because we know because TSA now 356 seems like a lot, but there's a lot of TSA agents too. I noticed there was one case in Gainesville with TSA agent. Here's what we don't know: where did the TSA agent contract the disease? That's what we don't know. I mean, be right with you, sir. He could have gone in anywhere off duty. So I don't really think that's that big an issue, but you reminded me of something else. You know who doesn't wear masks? The pilots. Say again?
I said, come on, Sully.
Come on, Sully. Come on, Sully. I didn't think you had a speaking part in this, Tom.
Once in a while I do.
Another thing to mute on the Zoom. So,
Two questions. In my former life, I flew a lot. That's why I don't fly much now.
right.
Sick of it. One, I noticed all those planes parked in the desert. And I said to myself, wow, if I let my car sit for 9 months and didn't drive it, it wouldn't function very well. I assume those planes were being flown and maintained all that period of time. The second question is the airflow above your seat. Should you turn it off or on? And then the third observation, I think if I flew, I would want to go nonstop rather than going through an airport, and I would feel more dangerous riding in MARTA from the Atlanta airport downtown to a hotel than I would on the airplane. So the two questions, the airflow, the planes that sat on the desert for 9 months and weren't run, and then MARTA.
Well, the air coming out of those vents is the same. It's just being forced through a smaller opening. It's the same air that's coming through the vents that run the entire.
It could be blowing the passenger behind you or in front of you.
But it kind of blows straight down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Seen a lot of discussion on that. Most people are split on it. I don't think that makes a difference. And the other question was, the airplanes. If the feeling is the airplane's going to be put back in service within a reasonable amount of time, they will maintain it. The airline, that is. But they don't fly it. They can't afford to fly it. Just like when you're probably not aware of this, but the captains get checked out on the airplane completely in the simulator. So your 740, well, a bad example, your 787 Dreamliner captain, all right? The first time he actually flies a 787 Dreamliner with passengers on board might be the first time he ever flew a 787 Dreamliner. They can't afford to fuel for training. It's quite safe. That part's not an issue. Now, if you go out to the desert, they call that the graveyard, right? And there's several of them. And so one or two things are done with the airplanes. If they can be put back in service, they're left alone. If they're not going to be put back in service, they're cannibalized for parts. You don't want to fly one of those put back together. Anything else?
Are there any report cards on how the airlines are doing that are public domain?
Yeah, you can go to, well, they all kind of self-report, so, but you can go to the airlines' websites, give you a lot of information. CDC gives you a lot of information. TSA gives you a lot of information.
Question. After COVID,
Yeah.
just thinking about mask and behavior, one place I've thought that I would continue wearing mask is an airplane.
Yeah.
What's your thought about how that after this sort of plays itself out, how much masks continue to be a part of air travel?
Okay, so you're just asking my opinion, right? Since it's a personal decision, and since to a certain degree, a lot of us have become acclimated to wearing a mask, I wouldn't be surprised ever to see somebody with a mask on. Now, it's a whole different question whether it's necessary or not, and I can't answer that. Yes, sir. People say that.
Hold on, please. So I can hear you on Zoom. Thanks, Tony.
You know, people say that the behavior of Americans is going to change completely based upon COVID because of all the Zoom meetings, the virtual meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Does the industry feel that commercial traffic is going to be down considerably because of change of behavior?
Just the opposite. They're planning on it to go up. I mean, it's going up steeply now to levels that were pre-COVID. Remember, we started with 2 million boardings a day, went down to 100,000. Tremendous drop off, back up to about 1.5 million. And they're anticipating the summer is going to be a madhouse because they're not going to be able to get enough airplanes back online and enough crews trained up.
George, how has this affected charter travel and the business at the FBOs?
I think it's probably helped them. I haven't looked into that, but it just makes sense because it's just more control. First of all, you don't have to worry about that personal behavior thing, do you? Yeah. And also, if you're flying charter, you're not going through a big terminal, are you? You're in some other holding area. Yes, sir, Jason.
George, great update. Jason Shank, question. So a cruise, would you go on a cruise today?
Cruise.
A cruise. Royal Caribbean.
Yeah, I know what a
There you
cruise
go.
is.
Well, no. Well, select your cruise line because there's
Could you spell
ones
it out
that are
for me?
adults only, right? There's an adult only cruise line.
Yeah.
There's cruise lines that are requiring everyone to be vaccinated. So what's your suggestion there?
Go to the website, see what they, seriously, I've given it no thought at all. And I don't, hey, the first disclaimer was I was not a virologist. I can tell you how the airplane works, okay? I'm pretty sure the ship's got a hull and a motor, and that's all I know about them. I know not to call them boats. Anything else? Okay, happy traveling. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. I know this will not replace or the significance of maybe some other hardware that you have rightfully earned over the time, but let me please give you this gift of our Rotary theme coin, and thank you for your time today, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Those that may recall, with the pandemic and changing schedules, we had to delay last year's ROTC program into the first part of this year. And George was trying to put something together and many, many challenges. So he actually called an audible on his own and put this together. And I greatly appreciate continuing with that slide and bringing some very applicable information. Learned some stuff today. That's good. Thank you all. Great crowd. Look forward to continuing seeing you each and every week. Next week, we're going to hear about canoe project at the Smithsonian. So should be interesting. Dr. Joshua Bell next week. Quote of the day before we adjourn. When everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. Henry Ford. Have a great week, fellow Rotarians.